be a life-changing experience for them. Oh, it definitely will be. You're not supposed to text during a ham fest. Hi, good morning, everybody.
Hi.
Welcome to the nuts and bolts of setting up a portable station. I'm Mitch, W1SJ, and yes, I do operate portable. I operate from home too. And I find a lot of people operate stations and they don't really think much about what they're doing. They just take a radio, slap a whip on it or whatever, and hope to work people. Sometimes they do, sometimes they don't. And I put together a bunch of things since I operate a lot.
Am I too late? I guess I am.
No, he left.
I know where to find him.
Got it. So, hear a lot of people, you know, and they're doing things and, hey, I can't work people, whatever. So I put this together, share some of my thoughts and ideas on how to make this work. So, I mean, the first thing that you have is, what's your goal? Do you want to just turn on the radio and make a few contacts? Now, actually, I bought a radio here, and I thought I was going to buy a radio, so I just bought my little whip, and I didn't really put much effort into it, because all I want to do is make a few contacts. I didn't care. I mean, normally I wouldn't be using a mobile whip. Or do you want to try and work as many stations in as many places as possible? So if your goal is number one, you don't really need to be here, right? You're already doing the right thing. If you want to talk to a lot of people, then yes, item number two. And something else, well, I don't know what that something else is. At the end, maybe you can tell me what that is, and we can cover that. So you want to set up your station. Where are you going to set it up? And that's an important thing. You're going to set up in your car, in a boat, in an RV, or you're going to hike in, put it in a park. You need to think about that because each one has different requirements. You got to do your homework. What is allowed and what is not where you're going. You know, they may not want you hanging antennas there or whatever, you know, but luckily where I live in Vermont, they don't give us grief about that, but I know some people in some states, oh, we're not allowed to hang anything out of the trees. Why not? I don't know. I'm not there, right? Where can everything fit? Where's the radio going to be? Where are you going to be? Can you get to it? Can you not get to it? Whatever. Where will your antenna and feed line go? And you know, the higher the better, you know, so you need that. And safety. I mean, that's things that hams just overlook all the time, is that at the end of the day, you want to come out of this, A, alive, and B, without any injury. So that's important. So what are you going to need? Well, you're going to need a radio, obviously. You know, some people say, well, can I do it on my phone? Well, probably yes, but that's not as much fun. You're going to need power for the radio. So there's three choices here. You have AC available, which is great. Or you bring a generator. That's pretty good too, but you have to keep some things in mind for that. Or run off of a battery, whether it's a standalone battery or your car battery. Those are your three things. Then your operator location. Where are you going to operate from? Okay, you need a place to sit down. I don't think you want to operate standing up the whole time, right? You want to put the radio on a table, all that stuff. I mean, it could be something. Last night I was sitting cross-legged in the back of my van with the radio on the floor. Not ideal, but you know, I mean, this is Nearfest. This is what we do, right? You want to have a computer. The computer is for logging and also spotting yourself if that's possible. So, you know, people logging on a piece of paper, that's no good. You really need to move out of that, because then you lose the piece of paper, or in my case, I can't read my own handwriting anyway, so that doesn't work. Headphones, and I have an exclamation point there because I'm going to tell some stories about that, but that's real important. You want to have a microphone. So when I was prepping for this trip, I said, I better bring a microphone, otherwise I won't be able to talk to anyone, and a key and a keyer. Well, I said I'm not going to do CW, so I left the keyer home. A tuner. Well, the radio I got had a built-in tuner, so I didn't have to worry about that. But if it doesn't, yeah, you're going to need that, or a perfectly matched antenna. And the most important thing, a good antenna. Okay, and we'll talk about that in a minute. So the basics, it's rap, talk about rap music. That's what we do, right? Radio, antenna, power. Radio, assure the radio is reliable. Well, the radio starts drifting or it does this weird thing and I have to hit it a couple of times so it works. You ever had that thing? And lose that radio. Put it out in the flea market, put a cheap price on it and get rid of it. Assure you can set any frequency or any band. Make sure you know how to use the radio. A lot of hams don't, I don't want to do that. And headphones are a must. Antenna, have a good antenna. Not a convenient antenna, a good antenna. Have adequate length of feed line. If you bring 15 feet of feed line, you're kind of limited. Then your power, AC from a generator, unlimited time and power, assuming you bring enough gas with you. DC from the car. Well, it's great for like 100 watts, but you got to watch your voltage. If you're running from your car, you better have a voltmeter on that and make sure you're not dipping that thing below like 12.2 volts or something like that. Or you won't start the car and it won't be a portable operation. It'll be a fixed operation forever, right? Or DC from battery. It's very limiting with a small battery. There are some really nice, very expensive batteries that you can use that will keep you on the air for a long time. So these are all the decisions you must make. So let's detail about power. So if there's available power on site, like here, there's available power, you just need to bring enough power cord, 100 to 200 feet of cord, 16 or 14 gauge. You don't want to get thin of that. You want to bring the little zip cord, for lamps. The fatter the cord, the better, because you get voltage drop through it. Instead of seeing 120 volts at the radio, when you key down, you may see 100 volts, then that's not so good. So you want to have enough cord, but not use too much. That's the key. So you kind of want to be kind of near a power outlet. With a generator, again, you want to bring the 100 feet of cord. You want to put the generator far enough away where A, you don't hear it, and B, some generators make noise. I know the little Hondas sometimes make a little hash. And I find that usually 50 to 75 feet away from me, that kind of quiets that right down. Make sure you bring enough gas. Why do I say that? Because one time I didn't fill it before I used it. A Honda 2000 will run about 9 hours. Okay, and most activations are shorter than that. I only had like a half a tank in there, and so after about 4 hours, everything goes dark. And, luckily there were two of us operating, so I had to steal some gas from him and got back on the air. But yeah, make sure you know what your fuel consumption is and how much you're bringing. Start the generator before leaving. So I know the 2000s, you have to pull them a few times if they haven't run to get the gas up into the carburetor or whatever. If it's a cold day, those 2000s are very hard to start. So usually what I do is I put it in the basement for the overnight and then start it up outside, get it running, get things going through it. And then if you're in a cold location, 1 or 2 pulls and away you go. Because you pull the thing 3 times, you start freaking out, right? Oh my God, it's not going to work. What am I going to do now? And make sure the generator is serviced annually. So our club generator, we use it for 2 VHF contests, field day, and 3 activations. That's well over 100 hours. Actually, we should change the oil twice a year, but in October, it's the end of the season. I just changed the oil last week in it, about a quart of oil, whatever, you change it through. And it's not a bad idea to check your oil level every so often, because these things all have, if the oil level goes too low, the thing shuts off and you won't start it. And you probably don't bring spare oil with you. Okay, now if you run off the vehicle electrical system, again, 100 watts, unless you have an extra battery and a super heavy-duty charging system. Watch your voltage. I start the engine every 15 to 20 minutes, whether I need to or not, just to be sure about it. Because if you make a mistake, you will be stranded. That would not be fun. If you're on a separate battery, you get these LiFo batteries, so lithium ferrous oxide batteries. Super duper expensive, but great. They'll keep a 100-watt radio running for a while. The smaller batteries are good for QRP. So I tried this with a little motorcycle battery with 100 watts, and I was good for about 15 minutes. That plan did not work. That failed miserably. Make sure you can't short out the battery in transit and in use. Make sure you have caps over those things so that the plus doesn't hit the minus. It will start a fire. Keep your power lead short. And basically, if the battery doesn't work or it runs down, you're done. End the show. So you want to pay careful attention to that. So the radio. So my options, my K3, which is the best. Sometimes I don't want to bring that out to a bad place. I have a IC718, which is good for mobile. The transmitter's dirty on it. We tried bringing it to field day. It was a disaster because it bothered everybody else. So you got to know sometimes certain radios don't get along with other radios. I have a DX70. It's a basic transceiver, no filtering in it. You know, they don't have a filter I can tune, no Vox. But it'll make contacts. So now, 100 watts versus 10 watts. How many operate QRP? All right, we're going to do a game changer here. 100 watts QRP will severely limit who you can talk to. I mean, you'll talk to people, but there'll be a lot smaller number of people because they won't hear you. And my motto is life's too short for QRP. Now, and people say, you know, I'm an anti-QRP guy and all that, and you know, they all point fingers at me. But I'll tell you that I have VUCC, VHF UHF Century Club, on 3,400 megahertz, 3.4 gigahertz, running 50 milliwatts. Why do you run such low power? That's all I got. Okay, so, and the same thing on 2304, I run about half a watt or whatever. That's what I got. So, I mean, I can use QRP when I have to. I just usually choose not to. So the accessories you're going to need, and this is important to bring this stuff. If you don't bring this stuff, you're going to be in trouble. The first thing is, if you're running off AC, you're going to need a power supply, right? You can't plug a 12-volt radio into 120 volts. It doesn't work. So you're going to need a power supply, and even more important, the thing you're most likely to forget is the power cable, the thing that goes from the power supply to the radio. Okay, you don't want to do that with alligator clip leads like I have done. That's usually a bad idea. And so I give this talk, and I talk about this and preach on, you got to bring the power cable. So what did I do? Back in May, I did a park activation. I go to plug in the power supply. Yeah, I had the power cable, but for the other radio. It didn't have the Anderson power poles on for the K3. I go, oh, crap. Now what am I going to do? Well, I had to think quick. I says, oh, I have a port in the car here. I had to cut the DC port off of the car and jury rig it into the power supply. It took about 5-10 minutes. So wasted a little time, caused a lot of stress. And yeah, you got to be on top of that. I did my operation. Yeah, I'm going to put this radio on there. What did I forget? I forgot the dongle that goes from the mic jack, the 8-pin mic jack, to the connectors that connect to the headphones and connect to the computer cable. And so what did I do? So I had to go into the building and buy an 8-pin connector. And I looked up online what's the microphone pin on a K3, and I found 2 little wires in my bag of tricks, soldered those in there, clip leaded to those. You know, we have a term called I JS'd it. Okay, I got it together, and I happily made contacts. But you know, again, it's like stupid. Why didn't I do that? You're going to need RF jumpers to a external tuner if you use one, to a power meter. You should always have a power meter to see what you're doing, and to an amplifier if you're running an amplifier. So I actually have 3 jumpers for all of these things. A boom headset. Don't use a hand mic. A hand mic kind of ties up your one hand, and if your microphone hand is the same hand you write with, I don't know, is it? I don't know. See, I'm left-handed, but I was born ambidextrous, so I use the microphone with my right hand and I write with my left hand. And the same thing, I can send Morse code with either hand. Most people can't do that. But boom headset, you don't have to worry about that. You set the thing up, you go there. And don't forget the headphones. I'll tell you a story about someone forgetting headphones. Guy did an activation here in New Hampshire there at Sangodan over by south at Lebanon. And goes to set up. He sets his little QRP radio up with his little antenna or whatever. And he's ready to get on, and a whole bunch of Girl Scouts descend upon him having lunch. And, you know, they all chattering away, and he didn't have headphones. He couldn't hear anything. And he goes like this, right? And then they all go away. Okay, good. Now I'm going to operate, pulls the sleeves up and whatever. And then what happens? The lawnmowers come out and they can't hear a darn thing. That's not the funny part. The funny part is he posted this video to YouTube. I mean, I do dumb things. I just don't post them. And I don't tell too many people about them. He did this, and I call that out, and it's still on YouTube, by the way. We had one park activation where one of our stations didn't have headphones, and the whole time the guy has his ear in the radio like that. So real important. Foot switch. Now, I like to use Vox, so not that important to me, but the other operators, when we do multi-op, they're all foot switch people, so I have to make sure I have that wired in. And then if you want to do CW, and how many know CW? Okay, not too many. Really important, if you want to be a 5-tool player, you need to know CW, because sometimes phone doesn't work. And when you're doing a park activation, FT8 is not that good. You can't really send your park number on FT8. You kind of have to assume they figure it out. You get on CW there with the keyer there, whatever, and you just blast right away with it. But if you do that, you got to bring the keyer, you got to bring the cable from the keyer to the radio, you got to bring the paddles, the whole thing. If you forget any part of that, you can't do that. And I don't recommend sitting there with the 2 wires, tapping them together like that, which I have done. The computer operations, don't even think about paper logging. I have done it. It's not great. The last time I paper logged in earnest was 1990. Okay. Use the software at home before using it in the field. And you should use something that contesters use. There's a lot of Mickey Mouse software out there that sometimes they even work. So, N1MM is the gold standard. It's a real pain to set up, but it's good. And N3FJP is also pretty good. I use a piece of software that dates back to 1990. Everyone laughs at me. I use it on my DOS computer, and you know what? I've put 500,000 QSOs through that software, so I know it works. They had a software that the parks on the air people recommend, HAMRS. Real piece of garbage. How many use that? Nobody. Good. We were using it in activation. One of our guys set it up, and I always said, don't bring something new to an activation. Learn. And somebody hit one of the F keys for reasons unknown, like F8 or F7, and it erased all the times. So I had a log with no times on it. Well, when you upload that to Logbook of the World, there's no matches anymore. You basically have a useless activation. And we could not recover that. That software needs to go. No good. So back up the hard drive regularly. Hard drives do fail. Absolutely. Put a little memory stick in there every so often. Dump the log to the memory stick. So if you have a crash, at least you won't lose the whole log. You'll lose a portion since you backed up. And bring the cabling. If you want to connect your computer to your radio, make sure you bring that cabling. I don't do that. I'm old school. I have a perfectly good radio. Why would I want to ruin it by connecting a computer to it? And people call me a curmudgeon and all that, but you know what? How many times do I work people? Oh, wait a minute, I'm trying to get the computer to talk to I can't wait a minute. This is a contest. There's no waiting a minute here. It's give me a call when you figure it out. So I have to keep in my mind to log the right band and all that, so it's not really talking to the computer. But some people do, but if you don't bring the cable, it's a moot discussion. If you're going to use FT8, make sure that you bring the cable for that. I've forgotten that countless times. I go, oh yeah, let me go on FT8. Wait, where's the cable? Gone. For CW, make sure you bring the connecting cables for that. And you want to set up the computer for access to the cluster to spot yourself if you're doing an activation. You can use a logging software or a cell phone or a standalone program. Now, my problem is I do parks out in the outback in Vermont. What cell phone? What cell coverage? Zero. You go to our state capital, Montpelier. When you drive by, you're going east and you drive out of the city limits, there ain't no cell phone coverage till you get to New Hampshire. I mean, true story. People say, what happens if there's an emergency? I said, I get on 20 meters and call for help. That's the only thing that's going to work. There is no cell. My repeater actually does make it down in there. And somebody told me the state police has no coverage in there either. So it's, you know, it's a recreational area. One guy says, is there a restaurant here? I says, no, you have to kind of kill your own. That's the way it works. So yeah, a lot of times you just have to figure that out. Now, this is another problem I had. I was logging on this computer, and the battery died. That was back when I had a spinning hard drive and whatever, and the battery lasted maybe an hour, hour and a half. And when the computer died, you know, the battery went out, that's it. I couldn't log on the computer. So I logged on the back of a road map for a while. How many people have a road map in their car, right? So now I'm a little careful. This has an electronic drive in it, so it lasts a lot longer, and I always make sure I have battery backup for this. So avoid poor compromise antennas. Whips, no. You know, I like to make fun of buddy poles, but I have a Hustler, which is basically the same idea. I made fun of buddy poles at a ham fest, and they were all like three guys in buddy pole were sitting there like this glaring at me. I said, I have a Hustler, it works equally as well. I was using it last night. I was trying to break a DX pileup. You know, yeah, good luck with that, right? End-fed half-wave, you know, they sell all these things. End-fed half-wave, it's okay if you do it right, get it nice and high, but I have an issue with, I like a balanced antenna. End-fed half-wave has kind of high voltage on one end. Mag loops is the biggest joke going. You know, I would buy this mag loop, $1,000, right? It's usually the first 6 pages of QSD they got there. They don't work that well. Guy said, yeah, I built a mag loop, I had it. It worked almost as good as a vertical. Huh? Verticals don't work that good. You know, like mag loops are good if you have noise and you know where the noise is coming from. You can use the loop and null the noise out. It's good receiving, but not so good for antennas. High dipoles provide the best bang for the buck. And we'll talk why high is good. And you know what they say, if it didn't fall down in last winter's storm, not high enough. Right? How high should I put it up? Well, did it fall down? Well, no, it didn't. That's not high enough. Put it up higher. So you want to plan for a half wave on the lowest frequency. So generally, we'll operate down to 40 meters. That's a 66-foot long antenna. That's what we do. And if you feed it with open wire line and a tuner, you can make that antenna work well on every band that's higher than that. You can put it up horizontal, you can put it up as an inverted V, you can even put it up vertical, you know, hang it out of the tree. Flat horizontal is the best. If you put it in inverted V, the antenna height is the average along the entire length of the antenna. So if you're 60 feet in the center and 10 feet at the ends, it's going to be an average of that. Whereas if it's 60 feet across the whole thing, or what we call a flat top, that's going to give you a better takeoff angle. So tuner and open wire line, all that stuff is good. Open wire line, you got to be careful. You can't lay it on the ground. You can't have it next to metal objects. So you have to take care with that. And you got to bring a balun, either in your tuner or separately. If you get the balun, you can't plug the open wire line into the back of your radio. That's not going to work. So what you got to do before you actually go out there is you got to do reconnaissance. You got to either go to the site. Sometimes if it's close by, you go to the site, check it out, or you pull up Google Maps. Okay, where are the trees? First thing we look at, where can I set up? Where are the trees? And usually if it's a Vermont State Park, we call the park ranger, say, hey, we're coming, this is what we're doing, where do you want us to set up? And they look on the map and make sure that, you know, they know what's going on better than we do. So you want to have an effective way to get the antenna high in the tree. So, you know, it used to be the old days, you tie it around a rock or whatever, toss it over, or you tie it around a pair of pliers, and then the pair of pliers gets stuck in the tree, it stays there. Bows and arrows, slingshots, we now use compressed air launches. So we load the thing, we have a compressor, we load it up to about 50, 60 PSI, shoot a weighted tennis ball, we can put it over an 80-foot tree with ease. And that's how we do it. But, you know, those things can be inherently unsafe. Like that's a cannon. So you have to follow very strict safety protocol. Like you make sure there's nobody downrange when that ball's coming down. And you want to make sure you have enough cord to hold the thing up and enough feed line to get to it. I mean, if you put the thing up 80 feet in the air, you're going to need at least that much open wire line. You actually, if you go down this aisle here, some of the military guys, they got some monster antennas up. You see the open wire line there. They're about 60, 70 feet in the trees, and it works really well. Why should we put the antenna up so high? Well, this is the thing that people don't understand. You get vertical radiation pattern. So this first thing at the top there, this is what happens when a wire antenna is a quarter wavelength high. This is the vertical radiation pattern. So going this way is straight up, and going this way is straight horizontal. So you can see most of your energy goes straight up. Now, that could be good or bad depending on what band you're on. If you're on 40 meters during the day, that's ideal. That's why you don't want to use a vertical on 40 meters, because you're going to null out the people you want to work. On 20 meters, that's not so good. On 20 meters, you want to go out. So this is on 20 meters. This is a 17-foot high antenna on 20 meters. That's too low. So at 17 feet, well, if it's 35 feet up, it's going to be much better, and it's going to be really good on 40. It's going to go straight up. Some guys talk about these NVIS antennas. Fake news. Somebody made this up in a dream or whatever. It got on the internet, jumps up and down, and you see people hanging 80-meter dipoles 3 feet off the ground. Looks like a tripwire. That's not going to buy you anything. Every antenna on 80 meters that most civilians can put up is an NVIS antenna, because NVIS is about 35, 40 feet. That, you think that's high. That's not. That's like an eighth of a wavelength or whatever. So that comes into effect if you're at a really super duper contest station and they got 200-foot towers. Those guys do have low antennas for the short skip. For an average guy with an average plot, 35, 40 feet is low enough for 40 and 80 meters. And that's the part they don't talk about. Now, if you put this antenna up on 20 meters and 35 feet, look what happens. It comes out at about maybe a 30-degree angle. That's pretty ideal for short skip on 20, like to Illinois, Indiana, the western part of Ohio, that sort of thing. And that's our bread and butter. That's where you're going to work most of the people. Those guys, if conditions are right, those people are loud, and your antenna is putting out the energy where you want it to be. So, I always say shoot for like 35, 40 feet in the air and you should be fine. Now, as you go higher, if you can get that 20-meter antenna 50 feet in the air, these lobes, you get a top lobe, which you don't really care about, but these side lobes get lower and lower. This antenna starts to work better for California. Okay, and then for Europe, you even want it even higher. So that's, if you have a low antenna, you work people, but you're not going to be as loud, and that's really the key thing. That's why height is so important. The big contest stations, they have multiple antennas at different heights, and they just have a switch, and they pick the one that gives them the best bang for the buck. You can't do that in a portable operation, but you can certainly pick something that's going to help you. Now, the other thing you got to do is a little tech here called understanding your signal. These are signals compared to a 100-watt station at 25-foot high. So 25-foot high, anyone could kind of throw up an antenna like that, right? So let's look at power here on the left side. So if you run 1,500 watts, that's 12 dB of gain over 100 watts. That's going to give you 2 S units. You're probably not doing that in a park. There's some crazy people who might, but not often. One guy said, "Well, you should go to full 1,500 watts." This is the 500 that I use a 500 watt amp. I says that gives me what I need. That's plus 7 dB. That's 1 S unit. Well, 1 S unit, that's nothing from S8 to S9. Who cares? No, that doesn't matter there. But what if you're like S0 in the noise and you put the amplifier on and now you're S1 and fully copyable? Big difference, right? And if you are activating and you're calling CQ and you want people to answer you, you want to stand up above the band noise. You want people to hear you. So that's why that's important. Now look what happens when you go down to 10 watts. The QRP people, right? That's negative 10 dB, 10 times. That's 2 S units. So if normal band conditions are, like S3, now you're down to S1, now you're in the noise again, right? So you have that. Now we have to consider the antenna. So again, a Yagi is going to give you 9 dB a gain, a S unit and a half. Yeah, you're probably not going to be setting up a Yagi at a park. We have done it. We don't do it much anymore. We're getting older and getting smarter. But a dipole at 50 feet will give you about 3 dB of gain over a low dipole, particularly to the longer haul contacts. The stuff out in the West Coast and stuff in Europe, probably not help much towards let's say Illinois or Texas. Maybe a little bit, who knows? But yeah, like a half an S unit. And then look what a whip does. And this is kind of an average, minus 7 dB, you lose 1 S unit. So if we put all this together, in decibels you add up, right? 10 watts to a whip versus 100 watts to a low dipole. 10 watts is minus 10 dB. The low dipole is minus 7 dB. That's minus 17 dB. That's 3 S units. What does that mean? It means that if you're running a standard station with 100 watts and you're S8, and if you go to the 10 watts with a whip, you go down to S5. S5 is my average noise level. You notice that noise level has been coming up over the years. And I'm in a park in the middle of nowhere and it's S5. Okay, there's nothing, there's no power lines near me, no solar cells, there's no nothing. It's just, bands just seem to be noisy, or the receiver has a lot of gain, whatever. You're in the noise, and that's a big thing. And when you call somebody and they go, what? What's your call? That means they're not hearing you all that well. So, and that's an average. You go on 40 meters, sometimes it's even worse. So this is why you want to try and put out the best signal you can, because people are dealing with a lot of noise, whether it's band noise or man-made noise, whatever, solar cells. I mean, it just drives you crazy. Now, another issue you get is skip distance. So do you know, like, you aren't going to get on from here on 20 meters and work a lot of people in New Jersey, right? Yeah, or New York or places like that. Actually, I did hear some people. We had a little short skip last night, but generally the circle there, that's the 600-mile circle. That's the average skip distance on 20 meters. What that means is you're likely not working anybody from here out to about Ohio. All right. When I drive out to Dayton, I can't work back to my home state in Vermont until I get past Columbus, which is about 600 miles. And when I've went up to the Prince Edward Island, the same thing. Through most of Maine, couldn't do it. And then as I got closer to Prince Edward Island, I was able to talk back. That's the average skip distance. Now, yeah, there are times you get short skip in there, true. So if you do a park activation and you sit on 20 meters all day, you're basically telling all the people in that circle, pound sand, you ain't going to work me. And so that's why you need to do 40. By the way, 40 sometimes has a skip distance too. There's times from Vermont, I get on 40 meters. I can't work people down here. Nothing, I say, well, go on 80. I say, yeah, but no one gets on 80 during the day. That's the problem with that. So that's the other thing you got to keep in mind. And on 15, it's worse. And 15 is more like 800 miles. And on 10 meters, it's more like 1,000 miles. This is just a fact of physics. This is how it works. So if you live on 20 meters, you're going to discriminate against everybody within 600 miles or so. That's basically how it works. So be sure you have a way to use the lower bands, such as 40 meters. And by the way, 40 meters can often be noisy as all get up, too. That's the other problem. 10 and 15 are coming back, but can be unreliable. Yeah, it's great today, and then when you go out there, nothing. So, certainly look there, but realize that there ain't no guarantees. So your mentality with a station, don't aim for mediocrity. No, well, it's easy, I'll just throw this rock in the tree, whatever. If you aim for mediocrity, you just may meet your goal. And yeah, you'll work people, but not that many. Put up the best station you physically can. Certainly don't drag a Yagi up there and all that stuff, but we can put up our dipole antenna inside of like a half hour. We get the launcher, put up one end, put the other end, pull it. If we get our shots right and don't screw it up, we can get that up pretty quick. All right. And if you use a poor antenna and low power, it's going to guarantee that you'll discriminate against the small station. So the guys who are running those small little stations in the park, I call them drive-by park shootings. They come into the park, work at 10 people, and run away. Only the biggest stations in the world are going to work them, right? Little guys aren't going to hear them. You see them spotted, like, I don't hear nothing there. You hear people calling them. That's the annoying part of it. So choose your power and antenna wisely. Not being heard is not fun. And really, I was trying to chase an Israeli guy. He was on the air and trying to work him, and he didn't have a big pilot, but there was always somebody stronger than me, and I'm using my little mobile whip. You know, and I should have brought that dipole and the amplifier. So if you have poor conditions or poor stations, you got to go to CW or FD8. So I worked a few people on phone. I went to FD8, just let the thing run there while I was checking my email, and it was making contact after contact in Europe. So my wife says, "What's the point of it? You're not talking to them." He says, "That's the great part about it. I don't have to hear from them. I just put it in the log." So here's some ideas. This was at the Lowell Urban Park, if you recognize it. So there's not much in the way of trees here, you know, these little nothing trees. So I put a 25-foot mast and drive over it, hung the dipole off of it. So I had the dipole about 25 feet in the air, the best I could do. And I actually have the generator here in front of the car. And it says, "Do they allow generators there?" It says, "I don't know, I didn't ask." And nobody came and complained about it. So, I would have went to the battery. I worked Japan on 40 meters from that site. So, the crap works. The only concern, I had a great run on 40 meters, and this was in November, so it got dark like at about 6. I'm in the middle of Lowell. Says, "Is this smart to be around here in the dark?" I says, I don't know. I don't know the neighborhood. You know, all of Lowell kind of looks a little seedy to me. So I said, and of course, the cardinal rule is when you got a pileup, you don't mess with the pileup. You do that, and everything else becomes secondary. I says, "Well, I'll just have to deal with whatever." But no, I got out of there okay. Now, this was an example of someone who says, "Oh, we can't put that antenna up there." And my attitude is I don't say can't. You can always do it. This is the federal building in Manhattan. So during the year that we did the national parks on the air, we only have 2 parks in Vermont, 2 national parks, so pretty boring. But I go down to New York because I had family down there, and I was trying to operate in all the urban parks. Very difficult. A lot of logistics. So, just parking a car here. This is Wall Street. You can't drive down Wall Street, right? So we did it like on a Saturday when there's nobody down there, and we found a parking spot around the corner, and we had like a little wagon or something to carry the stuff. Now that's a statue of George Washington. I don't know if it's still there because I think New York City has banned George Washington statues or some such nonsense I read somewhere. You notice that little appendage coming out of his back? That's a 17-foot mast strapped to his butt with a 40-meter dipole on it. The dipole runs all the way across the picture. You can't see it. And someone said, "Did you get permission for that?" I said, "Well, I called the manager of the thing," and he said, "Yeah, you want to operate? Sure. Don't burn the joint down at the federal. It's a historical place." I said, "Sure." So some guy from some block captain or something says, "You have permission to be here?" I said, "Yeah, I do." He said, "Didn't the cops come by?" I said, "No, I never saw one." And we worked 200 people there, surrounded by 60-foot skyscrapers. It was amazing. We worked anybody. So there's a detail of it with the mast running up his backside and the dipole coming up. This building over here, by the way, that's the stock exchange. So I had that on 40, and then I had K0 BAK. He had a ham stick on 20 meters, which he actually did pretty well with. But yeah, we did a pretty good. The reason we would have been there longer, but my battery ran out of juice. I said, "Well, I can go back to the car and get some paper, whatever." He said, "Let's go home." It was 32 degrees and raining. It was pretty miserable, and we're sitting on the cold cement. I'll show you a picture of that later. This is at Alice State Park in Vermont. So there is a convenient fire tower. So the antenna goes off the 65-foot fire tower to the 65-foot tree, and you can see it's running over here. Barely make it out. We kick butt over there. My God, 800 contacts. When we do an activation with two transmitters, we will generally run between 500 and 800 QSOs, between like 10 and 5. So that's what setting this stuff up is. Sometimes we've done over 1,000 if conditions are really good. This is Night Point State Park. This is where we do the New England QSO party. So we have a little dipole running here. It's maybe only 35, 40 feet because that's all the trees will allow, but we're right on the water. So, we have a very good takeoff angle from there. And how do we get the things in the tree? We get this launcher here. Push the button, go thump, and you see this tennis ball come flying out of the thing. And you got to make sure the tennis ball doesn't get foul in the tree, though. That's the weekend part of that. So then the ergonomics. You could be operating for many hours. So when we do a park activation, it's usually 10 to 5, right? So that's 7 hours. Now, what you can do, you can sit up outside in an existing picnic table or bring your own table. There's plenty of room. But if you haven't noticed, it rains a lot around here, a lot, especially this summer. And my SP200 amplifier hates rain on top of it because it goes through the holes and hits the 3,000 volts. And I don't like it either. And of course, the weatherman says, no, rain, it's going to be a beautiful sunny day, drip, drip, drip. And then you're making a mad dash for the car. Or you can get wind, and the wind starts blowing. Not that we have much in the way of paper on the table, whatever, but if it's enough of a wind and one of those light Costco tables, it can blow the whole table over with the equipment on it. So I don't like setting up outside. You can set up in a tent or a shelter. If it's an existing shelter, fine, but again, the wind could be a factor. If you're setting up your own dining-like area, whatever, that takes time to do that, like a half hour. That's time you could be operating. So the guy who I usually operate with, he usually sets up one of those things, and it's more time to get set up. You can set up in a van or a motorhome. So I have a minivan. The middle seats were taken out when I bought it. I'm not a soccer mom. There ain't no kids. This is a ham radio cruising vehicle, right? And so I put a card table in there. I sit in the back seat, nice comfortable back seat, and I sit there operating for hours on end. And if I get cold, I put the heat on or whatever, or I put the air conditioner on. It's great. So yeah, that's good. Now, if you're in a car, not so good. So we did an activation on Mount Escutney, and we didn't have time to set anything up. We actually used Mount Escutney on the way home from here one year. And I'm sitting in the car all scrunched up, and the radio's over here, and I'm doing this and whatever, and not the most comfortable thing. And the other guy was operating, who was older than me, he could only operate for about 45 minutes. He had to get out and stretch, otherwise he wouldn't be able to walk for a week. So not so great. It's great for an hour or two operation, but you go longer than that, it becomes very uncomfortable. So here's a picture of outside, and one of those, again, those light tables, and if a gust of wind comes along, that can dump that over pretty easily. So you got to be careful. This was a beautiful sunny day, so not a problem. Here's the same setup from a side view. This is nice because people can come by and say, hey, what you doing? You can give them the whole ham radio talk. Well, yeah, I'm talking to people all over the world, and we're important. We're saving lives, whatever. This is my setup. So I go with I have an old SP200 hooked to my K3. This table ain't going to blow over with that SP200 on there, that big picnic table. I brought the fan because it was like a stinking hot day that day. And no, it was pretty good. This is our operating position over on Wall Street, sitting on, so we couldn't bring tables and chairs. We had to walk it in from the cars. I'm sitting on the cold cement, and it's uncomfortable. And that computer that you see there, that's this computer. The blue thing is the LiFo battery, and I'm using a DX70 Alinco under the computer. It looks like hell, but I'm sitting there with a straight key, pounding out CW contacts one right after the other. Okay, it worked, not comfortable. It was really uncomfortable, but, you do what you need to do. So here's a lean-to at one of the state parks getting pressed into service. So that's good. It gives you a little bit of protection from the elements. And this is where we put up a dining fly. Again, this is right off of Lake Champlain. You can get a gust of wind come through there and wreak havoc. And that park tends to be always very windy. We did a VE session there at that park once. And I think we hold the record for the highest sustained wind speeds during a VE session. I mean, it was like 30 miles an hour. We had all to do to keep tests from blowing away and stuff. This is in Bob's Vanagon, which is parked right down there somewhere. Okay, nice and comfy, put the thing up there, whatever, all the creature comforts at home. And this is K1BF in the back of my van, actually. So he's operating there. I think I got a video of that somewhere. Let me see where the video is. I'll do that one. So yeah, just do that the whole time. I have my cooler there with the food in it, all the creature comforts at home. If there's internet there, I'm spotting myself. It's a lot of fun. This is a close-up of my station. So it's an SP200 and an ancient Heathkit tuner. So, and the newer K3 next to it with the watt meter, you know, the whole thing right in front of me, whatever. It's pretty much set it and forget it. You know, I have to retune it when I change bands, but otherwise it's fine. This was this was a park activation we did at Richford, Vermont. It was 9 degrees that day. This was like a really cold activation. So this was in the back of Bob's Toyota or something, and I'm sitting in the back seat. He took the front seat out and put a table there, and then the radios are kind of in a little table to the left. So it was comfortable until you had to tune the radio. But, you know, we're sitting running on one frequency, so you didn't have to look at the radio much. And we had an electric heater in there, so we had a second generator just running the heat to the car. Boy, that's wasteful. I said, well, we're not going for, you know, green energy points. We're going for QSOs. Okay, this is I'm operating in the front seat of my van, and yeah, this was not comfortable. The computer was kind of like up on the dashboard or in my lap, and the radio was off to the side. It was the best we can do. So something you got to consider is operating requirements. Absolutely, you have to have water. People forget. I sometimes forget that. You know, if you're out for 7-8 hours, you're going to need water from somewhere. So I make sure I bring a bunch of bottles of water, put them all over the van. And food, at the very least, if you're doing an all-day activation like we do, you're going to need lunch. You know, generally around 1 o'clock or so, you're going to feel kind of hungry. One of our operators, Bob's, he brings his barbecue, and he starts barbecuing burgers and stuff, but that takes time to do it. If you're going to do a weekend activation, so I've been known to go out on Saturday morning, operate all day in one park, go overnight into another park and operate all night, you know, till about midnight or so. And then first thing in the morning, run to a third park. So I do 3 parks in 2 days. Well, you got to bring meals. You got to bring dinner for that, and breakfast and all that other stuff, and snacks. So you got to kind of think ahead of what you're going to need during that time. You're only going to need a change of clothes for overnight, or change of clothes if it rains and you get wet, and warm clothes if needed. Kind of just like coming here and camping out, right? Temperature control, you need heating for cold climates. I just start the car up usually, or a fan for warmer climates. And overnight, don't forget the sleeping bag. Otherwise, it's going to be kind of chilly there. And you want to have lighting, lighting will run off your generator, or even portable lighting. So your ability, you need to practice. You don't be a super operator overnight. You keep doing this stuff over and over, and you kind of get to the point where you can do it in your sleep. The best practice strategy is making a lot of QSOs, getting on, you keep talking to people over and over again. You learn what works and what doesn't work. Participate in phone contests. Sweepstakes is coming up here in the middle of November. Get on for that. That's a really hard contest. If you can master that, you can do anything. 10-meter contest is coming up in December. That should be a real blowout. And there's a whole bunch in January and February, and of course field day. The more you get on and operate, the better you can just do that without thinking much about it. Practice with different radios and equipment. So I was in Italy, and I was operating from various places. Different radio, different software. Wasn't used to any of it. I had to learn quick. I couldn't say, well, I can't do this stuff. I don't know it. Well, I wanted to operate, so I figured it out. Learn to listen. So listen and get the information right. I hate it when I talk to people. I give them my name, my location, all that stuff. What'd you say your name was? And usually when they do that, I just say, well, I got to go. I don't like repeating myself. Learn to send with a minimum of words. So if it's a contest or even a park exchange, just give the park number. Don't give all this auxiliary information unless you know the guy or whatever and your friends, you want to chat for a while. That's different. So when you go out before the event, learn the details of the location. Learn how to get there. My God, if you spend 2 hours getting lost, that's 2 hours you're not operating, right? So, pulling up all sorts of maps. I mean, some of these parks are in some really weird places to get to. I saw one park. There's 2 parks left in northern Vermont we want to hit, and one is out. It's basically where it is. There's a sign, end of the world, 2 miles. I mean, it's way out there. Then you want to, the day before, pre-announce your activations on the POTA and the WWFF sites. Let them know you're going to be there. If it's a park they need, they'll go looking for you. So during the event, call CQ. If you're running around chasing, I mean, a lot of park guys chase me. Well, if you're chasing me, then they can't chase you, right? So, I once in a while I'll call somebody if I hear someone interesting, but I'm CQing the whole time. And I give my call sign at the end of every contact. Why? Because people are tuning around. They may not hear who you are. Spot yourself if you can. Or I tell people, hey, can you spot me? When I was up in the state parks and they didn't have any internet there, I said, spot me. A couple people spot you. You get the pileup going. So 20 meters is best in the daytime, but make sure you spend some time on 40 as well. Give the short skip a chance. If things get slow, try CW if you can. If you don't know CW, learn it. Learn to be basically an operator. FT8 you can do, but you really can't effectively send the exchange. I hear they're going to make some changes to it. I don't know. Now, if calling others, use your entire call sign. If you have a really long call sign and you find yourself using the last 2 letters, get a different call sign. Lay some loot on the FCC and get a short call sign. Don't give partials. The guy listening on the pileup, I'm listening for the most number of letters of your call sign I can get. If you're only giving 1 or 2 letters, you're kind of shooting yourself. So give the entire call sign. And phonetics, absolutely. My call's W1SJ. If I say that over the air, there's only a 30% chance they're going to get it right because the S sounds like an X, sounds like an F. You can tell the difference in here, but not on a radio. You can't. And, W3TBD, I don't know what the heck that is, right? All those letters all sound the same. So you got to use phonetics. I got to say, phonetics, please, or, say again. Now, don't say nonsensical things that are not necessary for the contact. QRP. You guys say QRP when you operate? Some people, so WN3TBG QRP. They run it all together. So they're not saying phonetics, and they're running the QRP in there. And so I say, who's the N3 QRP? N3TBG QRP. And we go 3 times. It's, look, we lose the QRP. Just give me your call sign phonetically. I have to say it. Why? You don't need to. I don't say QRO when I run high power. Why? I don't know. I guess somebody's telling him to do that, but it just makes it. And they said, one guy said, we send QRP so you listen up for me. I said, I'm a contester. I listen up for everybody. I said, when you send QRP, it means that you're not a very good operator, and I'm going to work you last. I said, don't do that. And then when you do park activations, park to park, park to park. Well, you got 3 people yelling park to park. What are you going to do with that? The park to park, go ahead. 3 people are all talking over each other, right? I said, I can't log P2P. If I do that on my computer, it's going to say you're in the Netherlands, right? P. I says, just give me the call sign. I said, I'll work. I said, if I can hear you, trust me, I will work you. If I can't hear you, put up a bigger antenna. That's the only thing. So yeah, or people start telling me their life story. Before you establish contact, make sure that I'm actually hearing you. I may just hear bits and pieces. So if I go back with your call sign and a report, whatever, then you can give me a little bit more information. So yeah, don't waste time if they're not hearing you. And guys say, oh, there's all these guys in Tulan calling you. I says, can't hear them, man. I'm doing everything I can. So, that should be a sign that, hey, I need a bigger antenna. So the checklist. He's taking pictures of it, right? This is my checklist. It may not work for you, but yeah, I go down this checklist, check it religiously to make sure I got everything I need. We got a 4-page checklist for field day. You got to see that, man. It's indexed, and I mean, we bring a lot of stuff to field day. I got a long list when I do a VHF contest too, because I'm up on a mountain. We can't buy something or get something we need, right? So yeah, you have the main part. You have the radio, power supply, the tuner, this, and then you have all the accessories and the antennas and the power, and then I have what's called the overnight option. If I overnight, things I need for an overnight thing. So yeah, I run down that. So I put a lot of it in my little red case, and this was a short activation we did with my little DX70 there at the top. The watt meter, the voltmeter I have, we got antennas there, whatever. And then in this big case, there's the amplifier. We took a ferry to some island. So that's why I packed everything up this way. So the surefire way to assume everything is packed and ready to use is build your station outside of the shack. We do this for field day. I literally set up a table in my living room, and I carry everything from the shack and set it up in the living room and power it up and do a few CQs and make sure everything is there that works. Yeah, not doing the antenna, obviously, but make sure that the power connectors and all this other stuff that you tend to forget is there, and then all that gets into a box, goes into the car. And God, I can't tell you how many times you go to field day, somebody forgot a power connector. Luckily, field day is close by, they have to just run home and get it, but if you're out in the middle of hell and be gone, you're not, you're stuck with it. So, do a lot of portable operations. Practice makes perfect. Any questions? Covered it all. You either covered it all or you were asleep. You don't know what I talked about or whatever. Okay, well, go out and have fun. Thank you.